All right, if you're just joining us, Patrick McNeil coming in to do some commentating here from Sydney, Nova Scotia. Just got off the field and ready to help us out here. Quebec in Ontario. Happy Canada Day. My name is Larissa Andrew-Sisson. We'll do a bit of play-by-play for you as we get into this grand final of Canadian Nationals.
Yeah, Ontario coming into this one with a 3-0 record. Quebec with a 2-1 record. Ontario looking for a clean sweep because the Ontario women were victorious in their grand final. So now they're looking to build upon the success of their women's team, and Ontario looking to replicate what happened when they played Quebec in the round robin, which was a victorious result for Team Ontario. See, Ontario is in the yellow kits, well, yellow, green, and black, I guess we could say, with the green shorts, the jumpers for Team Quebec, white, and blue shorts for Team Quebec.
Team Quebec coming in, of course, off a second division win at U.S. Nationals in San Diego this past fall, are looking to add some hardware to their collection, so this should be a great game of football.
Yeah, Larissa, I was talking about this earlier. The interesting dynamic with Quebec is they're both used to playing against each other and with each other with the 9-on-9 league that they have there. I don't know if you can shed more light on that, but certainly they get to experience the game in a lot of different levels.
Yeah, the strength for Ontario will be the fact that they have experience on this field, this 18-a-side oval. In Quebec, there are 5 teams, and they play 9-on-9 on a rugby-sized pitch, which means that the game's a bit tighter. Here today, if they can exploit the space and see if they've got the juice in the tank to get out wide, put the jets on, and do some running, which we don't get to do as much in Quebec on that 9-a-side pitch.
Now, if you're just joining us, myself and Larissa will be working in tandem, and of course, player identification is a bit tough for us broadcasters in these broadcasts, but I'll try to handle most of the play-by-play, and Larissa can fill in the blanks. More of a veteran when it comes to the Australian football game, but hopefully everybody that's here is enjoying it, and it should be hopefully a good game.
Yeah, it's a tidy 35 degrees in Toronto today. Beautiful football weather. Our videographer just gave us a look.
Well, in fairness, our videographer does have a tent. Larissa and I do not have such a luxury.
We also just played 2 games today, right? Coming off the field against Ontario, who gave us a great game of football.
And everybody gathered around, I guess you can say, for the final game of the tournament. 2 20-minute halves. A 10-minute halftime, and then 10 minutes to get ready for this one. Of course, they probably had an inkling. I would say these would be the 2 favorite teams heading into the tournament, but they had to play the games out. Both teams pushed at different times, but it is time for Ontario, Quebec for the men's grand final, and really a rivalry as old as time in any sort of sport or political spectrum, I guess we could say.
Absolutely.
So getting ready for this
Ball
contest.
In the midfield, we got Alex Bress. He's the guy who comes to football through flag football.
Interesting to see the different paths people could take into the sport. Of course, not an indigenous sport to Canada, Australian football. Play in the midfield to start off the center clearance. And play coming down into the Quebec zone. A nice mark for number 1. And he's going to run on, play the advantage.
Looks like it's out on the full. Oh, it's just a bounce. That's not on the full. Yeah, a lot of the players from Quebec are coming to us from hockey, soccer, and rugby.
Yeah, definitely all sports that you can bring elements to, certainly the physical aspect, and really the pace of Australian football, similar to hockey.
Yeah, as soon as you get used to that ball. Ball is thrown in. Big ruck contest, bouncing out. Dangerous Ontario here, and they've got hands on in there clear.
I think, Larissa, I've heard the supporters from Ontario seem to indicate that they have a goal. And, of course, I mentioned, too, both these provinces played in the women's final, and you know the respective contingents are there cheering on their players. In the case of Ontario, they want to sweep. In the case of Quebec, they're hoping to even things up today. So the ball will come back to the middle of the field for a center clearance. Ontario leads 6-0, 1 goal, no behind. No score on the board yet for Quebec. Clearance comes up. Ontario will win that ball, but Quebec quick to take possession.
Absolutely.
Play still in the center circle. Very physical game along the ground right now, Larissa.
Yeah, looks like we lost our feet there. Ronan Shaughnessy, the skipper, coming in. Support out back. Ball's gone forward, but Ontario have their hands on it again.
Yeah, play just briefly coming into the Ontario 50, but they're quick to get it back out in towards Quebec territory.
Number 6 looking dangerous for Ontario, Brandon Bentley from the Etobicoke Kangaroos.
He would be very familiar with this field. As kick towards the right pocket in the Quebec zone. Ontario pressuring here, looking for their second goal of the game. Currently a 6-0 scoreline in favor of Ontario. That is a goal that's on the board. No behinds for either team yet.
It's a free kick paid to Quebec. They've converted it out wide.
And we talked about this throughout today. Teams just want to work the wings and then work towards center, which goes back to the parallels we spoke of to hockey and soccer, of course.
Loose ball. Got an illegal disposal called in favor of Quebec.
So free kick for Quebec.
Got a loose player in the middle, absolutely.
Great use of space as Quebec cuts towards the middle. See if they're trying to work the corridor or maybe go back to the wings.
Yeah. This is Matthew Payne. And Kyle Graham, this is the full forward for Team Canada. He's played all.
Interesting decision there, but it looks like it might pay off for him.
Absolutely.
And I can see behind these two big trophies that are on the desk that it is a goal for Quebec. So 6-6, pretty even start to this, Larissa.
Yeah. They've, the Saints are known to come back hard. Oh, it's been called a behind. It's been called a behind.
A mistake, a 6-1 score line.
6-1.
The sound of the Quebec players made me think it was a goal, but apparently not.
Our angle isn't great. We also have the coaches standing in our eye line. So that's going to be 6-1 Ontario over Quebec. Quebec with the ball now here.
And also to paint the picture, we do have access to a replay screen, but unfortunately the sun is a bit detrimental in terms of seeing how things are playing out in that respect. Play back underway now as Ontario tries to work it along the wing from their own 50.
It's Bentley again looking for more work on the field.
Play now in the middle of the field. Quebec takes possession. So far, pretty even gameplay. And generally, when that happens, you see a lot of play in the midfield. It looks like we have a holding the ball call, I believe.
Yeah, we do have a holding the ball against Alexandre Perez.
So free kick will go the way of Ontario. And again, if you're new to the game of Australian football, you can't. If you have options, you can't hold on to the ball. It's called basically considered stalling the play. Ontario trying to work that right pocket. I want to see if there's a man down there. So you can,
He's getting to his feet.
it's always good to see us. The physicality and the heat and whatnot have taken a toll on some players this weekend.
Mostly the heat.
Now, have you ever had experience playing in this kind of weather? This is a first for me this weekend.
I'll tell you, 35, that's a new one for me as well. And in Montreal, it gets pretty hot and humid. Usually hovers around the 30, 32 degrees in July. Never my favorite time to play. I wish we played more up into the fall, to be honest.
Free kick here for Ontario. Looks like it's just inside the 50. And is that going to go through for a major?
That's going to be, it's called touch the post. That's a behind. It's going to be 1 point.
And it's amazing how often that happens if you watch Australian football.
So it's going to be...
So it's 7-1, I believe. 1 goal and 1 behind for Ontario, 1 behind for Quebec. Okay, go to the goal square for Quebec and see if that ball stays in play. Quebec just trying to work out a possession from their own end now. Seeing more contests along the ground, which is out of Larissa and I's sight lines as we work through the particulars of the broadcast here.
Looks like it's going to be a ball in here. They're going to throw it in. The ruckman getting ready for the contest. That's the Team Canada ruckman, Jordan Huckman for Ontario.
As we've said throughout the day, too, this is these events are big in terms of determining who can play for the national team down the road.
Yeah, great opportunity to show your skills off to the Canadian coaches. Some of the newer players from Quebec who've just picked up the game this season, looking to make waves here at this tournament.
Quebec taking possession in the midfield, but now looks like it'll be Ontario's ball. Now we have a contest in the midfield.
One of the new players, he's just started the game.
And he's probably been on the ball among the most for Quebec in the games that I've seen today.
Yeah, he's got it. This is hard-working Jeremy. And we have a mark. This is going to be Kyle Graham's happy space.
He may need to pull a bit of a banana here to pull this one off, but I think he has a good angle. He may try to work it into the goal square, may perhaps go for goal on the angle he's on right now.
Yeah, he's an experienced goal kicker. And he plays on and looks for that banana to gonna bounce through. Looks like it's gonna be behind.
I said before, if you see the one flag waving, you know it's a behind. If you see two flags waving, you know it's a goal. Quebec on the board earlier with a behind, and I believe that's their second behind. We're going to see a goal.
That's going to be their second behind, so they're going to have a kick out from the full back here for Ontario, looking to convert, move the ball down the field. That does not go to hands. It's going to bounce out of bounds, so they're going to throw it in.
And the thing is that it's only really gotten warmer as the day's gone on, so that's got to be wearing on all the players.
I'll tell you, this breeze right now is pretty well received.
Yeah, well, we're not turning that down. After the boundary throw-in, play still in the Ontario end, but it looks like they're going to make way with a series of handballs to try to move it out of their own 50.
There's Brendan Bentley again, getting hands on it and moving around the back of the contest. There's a kick out wide, and Bress out there for Quebec to pick it up, but it looks like it's bounced over the line, so they're going to throw it in.
Now, as you mentioned before, Ontario winning the round-robin game, but if the start of this is any indication, we're going to be in for a tight contest. Ball up from the boundary. Play midfield-ish, we can say, but more towards the Ontario side as Quebec tries to put on the pressure.
Lucky bounce here for Quebec. If they can find a loose player to move the ball to, Ontario up hard with the tackle, they're going to get paid for it there.
Free kick to Ontario after the holding the ball call. So good work by Ontario. Looked perhaps like that was an opportunity for Quebec, but Ontario takes the play the other way. Now another mark in the midfield for number 23 there for Ontario as he kicks the ball down the right side. Ball bouncing along the right boundary, but still in play. Ontario's
Quebec moving forward, trying to get players into that defensive zone.
Here's an opportunity for number 3 for Ontario. He wasn't, or is he? Is he going to miss that?
Yeah, he kicked it through. No, that's a goal.
One of the Quebec players was applauding. He thought that had been spoiled, but that is not the case. So Ontario on the board again.
So it's going to be 13-2 in favor of Ontario. We're doing 20-minute halves in this grand final. Ball's going to come back in for a center ball up.
And these
Quebec will be looking to get back in the game here.
These players probably a bit more equipped. They have more depth in terms of their rosters, both Ontario and Quebec, obviously, because that's where the sport is most widely played, but also proximity, probably easier for those players to get to the tournament, especially in Ontario's case.
Yeah, definitely in favor of Ontario as the home team.
But Quebec looking to spoil the home field advantage.
Bentley again. No, he's going to get the call for the holding. There it is. Quebec getting paid there for good pressure. That's going to be from their skipper, Ronan Shaughnessy.
You really see the holding the ball calls increase. The more the skill level goes up, more experienced tacklers that are used to the game. As Quebec tries to work it up into the Ontario end at midfield. Some jersey tugging, which is acceptable. Jumper tugging, we can call it. Contest along the left boundary midfield.
While he was starting his contact with the tackle.
That's where we're seeing really a lot of broken plays, and it's not a sign of a lack of offense, but the team's fairly structured, and it's preventing a lot of link-up plays from happening thus far. And there's a great intercept mark for number 35 for Quebec. He'll kick out of his own 50. Fires it towards the midfield. Almost another intercept mark by Ontario, but contest along the ground, and that's where the game gets a little bit ugly. Kick towards the 50-meter. In the Ontario zone as Quebec looks to put on the pressure. 13-2 is the score in favor of Team Ontario. 2 goals and 1 behind to 2 behinds. Kick out now comes back towards the 50. And there's quite a heavy boot from number 25 of Quebec. Is not going to go the whole way.
Looks like that will be a behind for Quebec there.
So we're seeing Quebec is getting their opportunities, but they just haven't been able to get it through those middle posts.
Pressure's on, keeping the ball in that forward zone, which is great. You want to convert that with some goals here. Quebec is going to look to switch that way.
Coach is very vocal as well, working the interchange gates, making sure the teams are as fresh as they can be for this game.
So we're going to have a change here with Quebec. George coming off. Greg Kaza going on for Quebec up in the forward line.
Play currently on the right side of the middle of the field, or our right side, I should say. Quebec has a free kick. currently 13-3 to Ontario. But Quebec looking to generate more pressure again. That's perhaps been an Achilles' heel, is getting in but settling for behind.
Absolutely, there's Bentley again. Finding the space, getting the ball.
Key mark for Ontario, but it's turned over on the handball.
For the switch.
Number 54 for Quebec chasing after it. As you just said, Larissa, Quebec really likes to use that switch in the midfield. We've seen them use that a few times already in this game.
Absolutely. Looking to clear the ball out to space. They have a lot of strong runners and a lot of speed out on the wing, so they're going to want to use that to get those players into space.
Intercept mark for Quebec. And again,
a switch.
Yeah, another switch, but this time we might see an intercept mark. No, there's a mark for Quebec. Now we're seeing the more conventional working the boundaries and working in as they move in towards Ontario's 50.
There's Matthew Payne, takes a kick, looking to find Kyle Graham in the forward line. Unlucky there. Took some hard contact after the kick.
But we'll see a throw in here. There's still an opportunity for Quebec to keep the pressure on.
Absolutely. Their ruckman's doing a really great job. Youssef in the ruck. They've pulled Jordan off, so I don't know who's working for Ontario. They've won the tap, but unlucky. Don't have the numbers on the ball here, and Ontario's coming out with it.
Yeah, and that's a key clearance for Ontario, but the pressure may still be on for Quebec.
A little bit more talk there, we wouldn't have had two players running into each other. Quebec might have had a clean mark.
And for those of you not overly familiar with Australian football, obviously you have your positions like any other sport, but that really tends to break down when you get those battles along the ground. Then it just becomes a numbers game.
Absolutely. The fun thing, coming from a sport like rugby like myself, the fun thing about Australian rules football is if you do make a tackle and the players deemed to have had prior opportunity, you get paid with a free kick. That's a turnover.
It keeps the flow of the game going.
Ontario coming up with it again. Looking again on the boundary, looking for Bentley again.
Play along the right side now in the midfield. Again, 13-3 is the score in favor of Team Ontario. 2 goals and a behind to 3 behinds. Quebec just hasn't been able to capitalize when they've got inside that 50.
The ball's going to Ontario here. Quebec looking to push back on defense. And a great intercept mark.
Seen quite a few intercept marks from Quebec in the midfield, and they've really made it difficult for Ontario. Probably more so than Ontario's encountered at any point in this tournament.
This is Alexandre Bresse pulling back and being 1 kick away, looking to get loose and be there so that Ontario doesn't have a lot of clean clearances.
Again, Quebec working the switch in the middle, a kick to Ontario's 50.
You see the numbers there with Ontario. Got a couple extra men down there.
And they've done a really good job of getting back to their own goal square and really not giving Quebec a lot. That's part of the reason we've seen Quebec forced to those 3 behinds. Play now towards the Quebec 50. Ontario looking to generate some more pressure. Good spoil there. Looks like number 39 for Quebec, if I'm seeing the number correctly. As the play pushes towards the boundary, but Ontario trying to keep it alive. Play along the right side now. Again, 13 to Ontario, 3 to Quebec. In this first half, 2 20-minute halves here. See another contest on the ground.
Ball's a bit loose now, away from that grouping of players.
We've talked about it earlier today. The ball gets very slippery with the combination of all the sunscreen the players are wearing, the sweat. And that's why you're probably seeing a lot of those marks dropped at the last second. But thus far, the execution's been fairly clean in this game.
All right, we're having a throw in here. In dangerous territory for Quebec. They've come up with it, but aren't able to get that disposal.
Ontario trying to create some pressure just inside the 50-meter line now as it comes out towards the boundary on the right side. It's just going to go bouncing, so play will be halted again.
You can see the fatigue now with the players, the execution of the skills. The kick's not going exactly where they planned.
And these are 2, I think, well-organized teams as well, and they've both been good at disrupting the other in the start of this contest. Boundary throw in on the right side towards the Quebec goal. Ball on the ground here. Ontario has the numbers in the ball vicinity. Can they do anything with it? Is that an incorrect disposal?
That's going to be an incorrect disposal. The contact there from Quebec, he did drop the ball.
So an opportunity for Quebec again. Let's see if they try to work the flank or go to the
Just Corey Crawford out here on the wing.
Crawford having a good battle for it, but Ontario able to get some possession and work it down the left side into the Quebec zone.
Quebec had their hands on it. Looks like it's tackling without the ball. The ball's going to go to Quebec here.
You have to be careful of those late tackles. You don't want to give up possession. It's an opportunity for Quebec to break out at their own end. At number 35, completing the mark for Quebec.
Excellent work by them. Alex Bress looking for a mark here.
An excellent mark there.
Number 46, Alex Bress.
He's been very prominent in this game so far.
Coach calling for the ball to go into the hot spot in front of the goal square. Ontario has hands on it. That incredible tackle by Adam.
Excellent work. That's going to set up a free kick for Quebec, and this is a prime scoring opportunity.
Adam Masmoudi, new to Australian rules football this year, looking for goals.
That's been the curse for Quebec thus far, getting their looks inside the 50, but haven't been able to finish the job, so to speak.
So this one's going to be out on the full. So that'll be a free kick paid to Ontario. Kyle Graham standing the mark there. So the player can't play on. Ontario. Oh, unlucky there. The tackle coming there. Back. They're able to get the ball away.
And Ontario trying to work it along the right boundary now. It's number 11 for Ontario. Push it along the right side towards midfield. Is that ball going to stay in play? No, it's going to bounce out.
They are favoriting the right side today.
Yeah, going back to what you said too, Larissa, where some of these players come from other sports, a lot of the players may not have experienced a lot of playing a footy on an actual footy field. A lot of your training, if it goes onto soccer pitches, is a bit different because you can't really, you're using a rectangular surface as opposed to the oval, which makes a big difference. And obviously Ontario and Quebec are more equipped for that, especially Ontario.
You might see also a lot of the congestion around the ball. A lot of these players are used to playing with less players on the field. It's sort of equivalent to rugby sevens and the difference between rugby sevens and full union rugby. You want Quebec to find the space and try to exploit it. And that may be why the coach called for those switch plays, forcing Quebec to move out into space.
Ontario with a good series of marks along the right side here. Here's an opportunity to go for goal, but as we say that, big spoil for Quebec.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a ball along the left side. And I have to say, it's interesting, the footy lingo. We hear some Français along the sidelines here for Quebec.
Un peu de français. Donc, si vous nous joignez de Québec, bienvenue. C'est les finales de tournoi national des Saints de Québec qui affrontent l'Ontario en ce moment.
Excellent work. Très bien.
So this will be the halftime. Coaches are going to have a chat with their teams and try to sort out what needs to change for the next 20 minutes.
As Ontario leads this contest 13-3. 2 goals and a behind for Ontario and 3 behinds for Quebec. And really both teams not giving each other a ton out there.
Coach Phil Manassa taking the field. His dad played for Collingwood back in Australia. So he'll be out there looking to sort out what's happening with the Quebec forward line.
Yeah, you really see the coaches more involved, and that's another adjustment once the game gets up to a higher level. As a lot of the players, maybe it's their first time working with a coach, and even things like we're seeing the runners that come onto the field to provide water and whatnot, that's not necessarily a staple at the ground roots or grassroots level of the game in Canada.
It's something that's quite interesting about Australian rules football. Coming from other sports myself, water breaks happen when the play's done or the whistle has blown. In Aussie rules, because the field is so big, you need water runners to get out on the field and give water to the players during the game. So you'll run the water in the end where the play is not happening. And teams need to get messages out to players to move them around. Because the field's so large, they'll have a runner. They'll usually distinguish by a brightly colored shirt, and they can run out on the field and quickly pull players off and move them to different positions or send messages from the coach. The coach can say, you need to play tighter to your man, we need you to move up forward, we need you to stay out of the forward line, don't crowd the forward line. And those messages can only be sent on the field through a runner.
And substitutions as well, and for yours truly, this is my first time playing in that kind of environment. As I mentioned, some of us who come from smaller communities aren't used to playing games that scale, and if you're on the opposite side of the field from where your interchange gates are, you're probably not going to hear your coach if he's barking at you, but it's certainly a good opportunity to communicate those messages through a runner. And of course, if you watch the game at the highest level, the head coach is up way above and dictating messages through the headset. It's quite the spectacle to see a game on an 18-on-18.
You do appreciate the runners, someone like me who has bad hearing. I need someone to come and pull me off.
Yeah, and the coach is very active. And as I said, it's interesting with Team Quebec because a lot of the terms translate, even though obviously French would be the primary language. You hear, like you were saying, the hotspot the coach is calling for. But when the players are talking to each other on the field, some of that might be in French, and maybe that's advantageous if Ontario can't hear them communicating. But they shouldn't sleep on how many members of Ontario might know a second language.
Yeah, we definitely wanted to exploit that with the West teams today, switching to French on the field when it came to the Montreal Angels. The issue is our head coaches are all Australian. So when it comes to the French for them, it may not be as strong, but definitely on the field, the players will switch to French if we can. Advantageous for us if we can call a position or call a ball quickly and quietly in another language.
And I can tell you on the Nova Scotian side of things, when Chris Bork and Miles Amiro speak to each other, that's an Acadian French dialect that's entirely different altogether.
Their own language on the field.
Which can be beneficial to the players for sure. We are in the midst of the 10-minute halftime of the men's grand final, the 2018 Australian Football National Championship. Happy Canada Day to everybody. 13-3 is the score to Ontario. 2 goals and a behind, and 3 behinds for Quebec. Quebec just not able to solve the mystery of those middle posts inside the Ontario 50 thus far.
Yeah, their coach is definitely going to be having a chat to them about moving the ball into that hot spot and getting players to that contest. A couple of times in that first half, we saw a lot of green jerseys from Ontario get into the contest and punching the ball forwards. We're going to want probably to see a Quebec player running in there loose, trying to pick up those loose balls that are bouncing forward.
I believe I actually saw Greg Bridges, who had been playing with Nova Scotia, putting on the Quebec jumper. So Quebec, I don't think with as many numbers as Ontario, so pulling in some reinforcements. Of course, Ontario, they're the host team, so, and they have certainly a large resource of players to draw from, so that's advantageous to them, but Quebec not making it easy for them thus far. This is probably maybe the lowest scoring game we've seen at the half thus far.
Absolutely. It's something I said earlier. Couple of injuries to Quebec in the club league leading into the tournament have taken a few players out of the roster. And earlier today, the game against the West, the Alberta team game, Leo Colucci, who's one of our stronger, shiftier players, had an ACL injury, so he stepped out for the day.
Yeah, certainly a big loss for Quebec, and that's always going to be a factor at this, even at this level, physical play, if you lose players to injuries, and that's never a good thing, but Quebec soldiering on so far. And like you said, it's interesting the dynamic where they have the 9-on-9 league, but they do have some familiarity playing with each other as a team as well.
Absolutely, and that was Clément. I said Leo, but the player that unfortunately injured his knee earlier was Clément. This player comes to Quebec from France and picked up football through rugby. His background is in rugby, but he's found a home in football.
It's interesting because the game is probably not as similar to rugby as people think, but it does seem to be perhaps one of the most natural ways of converting. And if you follow the AFL, you may know that Mike Pike, who was a Canadian rugby player, actually captured an AFL championship with the Sydney Swans a few years ago, and that's, I guess, the greatest success story we've seen. But Andrew McGraw, I guess we can claim as our own as well.
Yeah, the people have been tending to. But a lot of times when you mention to someone that you play Australian rules football, the quick thing is that, oh, you play Australian rugby. Someone who plays both, they're very, very different. We do have a hometown hero. One of our Montreal Angels, Valerie Moreau, actually came out, trained with us with Team Canada, got noticed, made the move to Australia, was playing with the Eastern Devils out in Melbourne, and has been picked up by Essendon, and she's now playing in the VFL. Looking forward to next season when the Bombers will enter the AFL women's competition. So there is a professional women's league in Australia that was launched recently. Players from Canada looking across making the move to go and play professional sports.
Yeah, and the AFLW is actually really exciting, more so than the men's game from an international point of view, because the gap between Australian women and non-Australian women would be substantially closer than the gap between Australian men and non-Australian men. So
Yeah,
it's
the
exciting to see the
difference-
Canadians break through.
Absolutely. The difference in Australia is the junior, you play Oz kick when you're small and you play up until juniors, and around 13, 14, women's football for a long time had stopped. And so women were switching to netball, which is a version of basketball. And what happened with the women's league being brought in is that they've added new competitions and more clubs, and now women are going back to football but haven't played in a few years. So this will certainly change now. Australia will be developing football hopefully throughout all of the levels. But recently we've had Kendra Hale as well, another Canadian who's been out in Australia for a few years playing. A few of the girls from Ontario went to Australia leading into the IC, the International Cup, the sort of World Cup of Australian rules football outside of Australia. A few of the Ontario girls, I know Leah Van Sevenen, Jacqueline Halliday made the trip. I think from out west, Marlena from BC went over and played some club football in Australia.
Yeah, it's great to see the development of the game for sure. And it seems to have a bit of a foothold in Australia. It's really just a sports-crazed country, and I'm always amazed that Australia can be good at other club sports like soccer, with so many of their elite athletes are being drained into the Australian football pool.
And their rugby competition is extremely strong, especially their women's team. It's the one thing I loved about being in Melbourne was I was out playing with a club there, the Hawks out of Drysdale, and I noticed that a lot of similarities between Montreal and Melbourne in the sports culture. In Montreal, it's all about the Montreal Canadiens. We have our soccer team and our football. And
Good
they're the
weekend
same
for both
out
of
there.
them today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nice to see a sporty culture and be surrounded by people who love sports.
And what's also interesting to know is really the role that the AFL plays in terms of developing. It's not to throw shade on anybody, but you wouldn't see the NHL or Major League Baseball going into places where the game is really foreign and like propping up clubs. But most of these teams at the club level have a partnership with the AFL, providing gear, balls, and whatnot, and that's really what kind of gets the game going at the grassroots level in Canada and in the U.S.
Absolutely. The West Coast Eagles provide our Eagles out of Montreal with kits, and we've had support coming to us as well from the AFL in terms of coaching. So we were invited to a coaching clinic just a couple months ago, and we've had 5 of our Montreal-based players get certified to coach. And so developing the game abroad is something that the AFL is definitely committed to.
And not to be biased, I guess, but my club in Sydney is an interesting example, because that's really a case of what the AFL would like to see, where Jonas Scott, who's a native of Australia, started the club in Halifax, and one of the Canadians he recruited, Chris Bork, moved to Sydney and started his club there. And I think that's what the AFL would like to see. Somebody picks it up in one place and keeps the ball rolling in a new city.
Absolutely.
Players coming back out on the field. Second half about to begin. It is a 13-3 scoreline in favor of Ontario. What do you expect to see in the second half? More of the same? The players are going to get even more tired.
Absolutely. I expect to see Quebec putting more pressure on, looking to move the ball back into that forward line and provide some numbers up there.
And Quebec not able to crack through the middle goalposts yet, but 13-3 is certainly anybody's game, and 20 minutes is a lot of time.
20 minutes is a lot of time to be in this heat.
Yeah, and you know the players were hydrating heavily during the halftime. A lot of water, a lot of Gatorade, as the horn goes to start the second half. Center clearance looks like it's going to be won by Ontario. Of course, the team switched sides that they're kicking at to go to the second half. So Ontario now kicking at the goal. It's to our right.
Ball's going to be turned over. Quebec getting an opportunity here with a free kick paid.
Kick towards the Ontario 50. Looks like we got a battle on the ground in the midfield.
See the pressure Quebec will be looking to do there.
Yeah, Quebec with the numbers right now in the midfield. But can they win this contest? It's going to come back to number 1 for Quebec. And again, Quebec now kicking to the left, our left. There's a ball kicked towards the boundary on the right side. Is that an intercept mark for Ontario? No, ball's still alive on the ground.
And a whistle. Looks like they're going to pay that mark.
it is Ontario looking to work their way up the left side of the field. Again, this Ontario holding a 10-point lead, but still lots of time left. We're just getting started in the second 20-minute half. So we have a boundary throw-in towards midfield.
Contact there with the two ruckmen. Quebec comes up with the ball.
Huge opportunity here for Quebec, but Ontario with the numbers in the goal square for now, but Quebec applying some pressure. Right now at the top of the 50, and now we're seeing the physicality ramp up in this one. But Ontario is going to be able to clear it out. A bit of a run and a kick towards the midfield. Play blown down. Don't see a lot of bounces at this level. But the player in that case for Ontario was able to get a bit of ground before he kicked the ball off. Now play coming in towards the Quebec 50 as Ontario looks to add to their tally. Ball going way up in the air now. We have a mark for Ontario. Certainly within goal scoring distance here.
Coach is calling for Quebec to get into that goal square, get their hands on the ball.
And it just becomes a numbers game if this ball doesn't go through the post. Number 9 for Ontario looks to blast it through it over all the other heads. And that is a goal. That's a huge goal for Ontario the way this game is going.
6 points for that goal. So our score now 19-3 in the second half of this grand final with the Quebec Saints taking on Ontario.
Does Ontario have a colloquial name that they are referred to? Do we have anything for that? I know Quebec is the Saints, which is obviously based on the Fleur de Lis on there.
Absolutely. I don't see a name on this sheet, and there are birds on their jerseys.
Well, that is similar to the AFL in that some teams have an official nickname and others don't. So somewhat of a soccer-esque theme, I guess we can say, to the game of footy. Center clearance is going to come following the Ontario goal. Again, that makes it 19-3 in favor of Ontario. 3 goals, 1 behind, 3 behind. Ontario is going to come out with the ball. I know he's got a lot of numbers in that center circle. Ball kicked towards the Quebec 50. Here's an opportunity for number 20 and number 9 trailing as well. The ball along the ground. They have to watch hands in danger here. 27 for Ontario. Quebec just needs to get it out of their own 50 right now.
Yeah, he got hands on it and was kicked away. Now Ontario's out alone there, and there's no more.
Yeah, seeing a lot of the game played on the ground.
Yeah. Well, I gave him a free shirt. That's it.
Back towards the Quebec 50. And play blown down. Again, 19-3 is the score in favor of Team Ontario. Captured the women's grand final. They want to capture the men's as well for a clean sweep of today's proceedings. It's a ball up on the far boundary.
I'm going to try that one again.
That's at the official's discretion. If they don't feel they did it right the first time, they can do it again. Ball pushed towards the Quebec goalposts. Ontario pressuring now, and again seeing a lot of the game on the ground here. It looks like we have a tackle. That should be a ball up. I don't think he had much prior up.
It's indicating a free kick.
So it has been called holding the ball.
Might have been high contact.
And the umpires have been vocal in calling that this weekend. Of course, you can't.
Yeah, so that's Ontario's got the ball there. It's going to be probably a call for high contact on Quebec.
Can't tackle above the neck or below the knees for that matter.
Yeah, you pretty much need to keep tackles below the shoulders.
It's similar to the strike zone in baseball. And I believe that is a behind for Ontario.
Yeah, that's one.
Those points will just make it all the more difficult for Quebec to try to get back into this game. But still time remaining. We're in the second half here. Ontario up 20-3 on Quebec. Kick out from the goal square, number 48. All kinds of traffic around in there as Players are towards the interchange gates now. Number 9 for Ontario kicks to the goal square. That was almost a beautiful mark for number 14. Is he going to get it after all?
He kept his hands on it.
Great persistence, especially given what we were talking about earlier with the ball not necessarily being easy to pick up today. Here's a prime opportunity for Ontario. Looks like he's pitching back quite towards the 50-meter line.
So the player may have stepped slightly ahead of the mark there, and the referee is going to pay a 15-meter penalty for that. You cannot walk through the mark or step ahead of the mark if there's a free kick. Even if you're a player not involved in the play, you can't walk through the mark.
And that is a very costly 50-meter penalty.
26-3 in favor of Ontario.
As Ontario will capitalize, and those are probably the type of 50 meters that'll drive a coach crazy.
Those are tough. The tougher penalties would be the ones for chatting to the ref. You want to show good discipline on the field and good sportsmanship. Also, these games are not possible without the volunteers, the refs, the goal umpires, and all the people that make this possible. Penny, one of the people running all the coordinating efforts here for this national championships, making sure that we're set over here with water.
Yeah, she's doing a great job of providing us with the essentials as the play gets back underway in the center clearance. Quebec looks to get towards the Ontario 50 as Quebec's really going to need to step up the pressure here if they have a chance to get back into this game. That's what they're doing in the short term, but another contest along the ground inside the 50.
Quebec still has their hands on the ball, and we have a kick.
Is that going to go through for 6? So
it's gone through. That's a goal for Quebec, finally finding that spot between the posts.
Yeah, that's...
I haven't seen the flags. Look like there's a bit of a discussion over there. No, the ball's coming in. That's going to be a goal for Quebec.
And if we were in the AFL, there would be video review, but that's we haven't quite reached that level yet, but that's a big goal for Quebec. Make it a 26-9 game, and that's the first goal for Quebec in this contest.
This is going to be, the coaches are probably looking for Quebec to shake up the momentum and change the game there, try to get the ball in that danger zone.
Into the hot spot, as you were talking about earlier, if the play comes back the other way, as Ontario looks to answer back. Really, a lot of times you'll see a game of momentum. One goal can change the game. We'll see if that is the case here.
And you'll see that with the tackle.
Absolutely.
There's going to be a ball up. No prior opportunity for the players there.
The tackling aspect, all about just keeping the flow of the game going. As Ontario works into the Quebec 50. Ball on the ground coming up towards the goal square. Number 9 for Ontario handballs it back.
Unlucky drop there, but the player still has his hands on it.
And that's a big goal for Ontario. Just a lot of grunt work, a few handballs, and sometimes it's not about finding a player. If you can just handball it to space and win that race, you saw a bit of that for Ontario there, and just a good, honest, hard-working goal, and that's a key one to their tally. They'll make it a 26-9 game in favor of Ontario. Larissa's 32-9, pardon me. Larissa's more resourceful than I am, keeping score here at the table.
My high school math teacher would be proud of me now. Okay, so ball is coming in on a free kick for Ontario. Quebec hands on it, looking to find some space out on the wing. Bress takes a kick. Looking for somebody coming through. Bress has hands on it. Ball comes loose, but Quebec, Ken Boudreau, defender for Quebec, gets the hands. Bress with the kick. To a contest, they got numbers, but Ontario coming up with the ball, kicking it deep into the forward line.
Yeah, good numbers for Ontario, lead 32-9. And a great spoil there by one of the Quebec players, deep inside the 50. Ontario putting on the pressure, and Quebec obviously looking to turn that aside and try to get things going the other way.
It's a high kick that's marked right in front, but he's played on.
It proves to be the right decision. And Ontario starting to pull away now. 38-9 is the score in favor of Team Ontario, and really they did a better job of capitalizing on their opportunities with 6 goals to 2 behinds, where Quebec 1 goal and 3 behinds. Center clearance coming following the goal. Again, this is the final of the 2018 Men's Canadian-Australian Football Championship, and the 2 biggest provinces of the country duking it out for supremacy.
Coach is going to be looking for the players to find some discipline. Captain Ronan Shaughnessy with Quebec having a chat with a few players on the field, making sure they keep their composure going forward.
And it's amazing, some of the most composed people you'll see off the field, they'll talk a good game about being composed with the umpires, but it could be a different story when they actually get out there in the heat of the battle.
Absolutely.
And we use the term heat of the battle literally in this case.
All right, Quebec got their hands on it. Kicked it forward, looking for a contest here. Ontario punching it out towards the boundary. Some contact there with the ball. The umpire looks like he's going to call that. Play a free kick there to Ontario.
And that's key for Ontario, even if they don't get a mark, just to kick it into space and try to get it out of their own 50, because Quebec, right about the time now, they really need to start putting on the pressure. But now that's what they're doing, bring the ball back to the Ontario side of the field.
Alex Bress again, keeping busy, getting his hands on the ball and being dangerous out on the wing.
Been a key player for Quebec as the ball gets worked out to the boundary. Looks like it is Ontario free kick as they try to work along the left side of the field.
Might have been accidentally kicked out on the full. Bress again with the ball.
Cheers,
some
buddy.
redemption.
No, I'm actually leaving this group.
Quebec hasn't really been able to go across with the switches that we saw in the first half.
Yeah, perfect.
The ball punched forward, but Ontario's going to take possession. Now another battle along the ground. Ball kicked towards the Ontario 50, but Quebec not able to generate anything once they get in there. It is Ontario possession here. Is number 2 for Ontario. Handball across. Now kick to space. 20 chasing after it towards the top of the 50. Ontario with the numbers as they move towards the Quebec zone. Good handball now, number 2 with a kick to goal. Is that going to go through? No, it's going to drift off for behind. And seeing good use there by Ontario, using all aspects of the game, running with it, handballing it.
Number 2, Tyler Schwartzentruber for Ontario. Have a chance there.
I believe the behind flag has gone up.
Yeah, so that'll be 39-9.
Another point for the Ontario team, and Quebec has to try to find their way out of their own 50.
Fullback Ronan Shaughnessy looking for Corey Crawford out on the wing. He's taking contact, gets the handball away.
Play along the left boundary. Tries to work out the left flank, but handball, the interchange gates. That ball is going to bounce out of play. Worth noting too, when it gets on the boundary, unlike a lot of other sports, it's where the ball is and not the player in terms of whether or not the play stays alive. So you can be out of bounds and catch a mark as long as the ball's in bounds.
Yeah, you can step over the line as long as you keep the ball inbound.
Looks like we've got a boundary throw in here. And this is in the Quebec side of the field, so Quebec looking to rectify that.
The umpire having a bit of trouble, so the umpire's going to do a ball up. Tap forward. Bogdan Rotaru from the Montreal City Blues putting pace on for pressure there. Ontario's coming up with it.
A good use of options for Ontario. Move the ball back and then forward. Now they bring themselves a free kick. Using the handballs to set up that mark.
It's key when the play is congested to look for that loose player, get the handball out. Players in space, they can kick to a target.
Almost the inverse of what you see in Canadian or American football would be using the punch to open up the kick. It's a key free kick for Ontario here. Takes his time. And That's another 6 for Ontario.
Yeah, that's going to be a goal.
You'll see the players, too, if they're kicking for goal, they have 30 seconds to set their shot. If you're Ontario, you're in the lead. You're in no hurry at all to kick, and as you can see, the patience pays off in this case. We're starting to see Ontario pull away here.
Sometimes on days like this, if you're huffing and puffing as well, you want to take a couple seconds to slow your breath before you take that kick.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I saw recently in a West Coast game, they actually stopped the clock so a player could tie his shoes on a free kick for goal. That's not a rule I knew was in the book. But
oh, goodness. I thought you have your 30 seconds, and then it's play on.
I believe that was Mark Lacroix on West Coast. So quirky game, Australian football.
Well, the umpires can make a judgment call there. If a player needs to tie their shoe,
Safety is paramount, even though it is a very physical game. Play towards the midfield. That's going to be a free kick for Ontario. And they're right now winning most of the battles. That's been the difference, especially in the second half.
Yeah, flooding the hot spot there. Got numbers out.
A great use of handball for Ontario as they approach the Quebec 50.
Kicking it in back towards the middle. Looking for some hands, loose out front. And it's marked.
Key intercept mark for Quebec in their own goal square. Now they try to work it along the right side.
Excellent mark there.
That's what Quebec needs to do. Get a few marks in succession, work along that wing, and then try to move it into the inside.
There it is. So Captain Ronan Shaughnessy finding Bogdan Rotaro loose in the midfield there.
This is probably the best succession we've seen of ball movement for Quebec, at least since the early stages of this game. This ball moved along the right side. Now it just goes bouncing, and it is going to be Ontario that claims that loose ball, but play's still alive here.
See all those Ontario jumpers there. A couple extra numbers on that contest.
Yeah, and that's what it is all about. Quebec
just up there.
Quebec takes possession. Number 1 for Quebec just bombs it down the field, looking for an option on the right side.
Excellent contested mark, and he plays on, gives the hands to Bress, looking to get paid here. Kyle Graham, hands on the ball. Handballs it, but unluckily bouncing. Got it
still on for
again.
Quebec here.
Graham gets a boot on it, and it's marked.
Now, though it seems counterintuitive sometimes, you think you've earned yourself a free kick. Sometimes it is best to look for your handball option, open up more space. Long boot.
That's touched. Hasn't gone over the line. Looks like it might be called behind. Yeah.
And that is a missed opportunity. Quebec will be upset. Did not go their way.
No, check that. It looks like it might be a goal here. I haven't seen the flags, but the ball's coming back to the middle.
Center clearance, and that's a big goal for Quebec.
So the ball will come back to the middle if it's a goal. It's going to be a goal for Quebec.
.45-15, the goal, the score at the moment in favor of Ontario. In the midfield now, number 35 for Quebec will kick out towards the right boundary. Ball goes bouncing, and again, Ontario has the numbers, but it's kicked the space. Ball kicked forward. Here's number 1 for Ontario on the left side of the field. He'll have a little spin move there and get the handball lead. Now it's kicked towards the 50-meter zone of Team Quebec. Ontario putting the pressure on now near the Quebec side of the field. And play has been blown down again.
Setting the mark down. Ontario's going to have a shot at goal.
This is a similar position where we saw their last goal scored, I believe. And that is the full-time siren. This kick for formality's sake.
The kick will count as long as the mark happened before the siren.
And has that gone through?
Not sure. But the score up until the buzzer, 45-15 in favor of Ontario over Quebec here. Hard battle in this heat.
Yeah, And it is a clean sweep for Ontario. They win both grand finals, but really a good showing for Quebec in this contest. They really made Ontario work for it. Game was really in doubt in that second half, and Ontario started to pull away, but certainly getting good pressure from their opponents from Quebec.
Absolutely. Quebec looking to build on their second division victory at U.S. Nationals. Looking forward to U.S. Nationals again in Racine. They'll definitely have a chat with the coaches and look to build on that game.
And of course, the national coaches had an opportunity to scout the talent on both the men's and women's side, and big step forward for the development of key players getting to play in a tournament like this.
Absolutely. It's a good opportunity during the break of our club season to come out and play 18-a-side. For the players from Quebec, our opportunities to play on that kind of ground are not as often as we'd like to see that. So it's great to come in here and play on that full oval.
It looks like the Ontario women are bringing out their jumpers, so I believe there'll be a presentation on the field for both the championship sides.
Yeah, players shaking hands, good sportsmanship at the end of this tough day. The trophies and medals are out. Ontario getting ready for the presentations. There'll also be some presentations afterwards. The sponsor to acknowledge their best on ground in those two finals.
We're at the campus of Humber College for the 2018 National Australian Football Championship that is concluded with Team Ontario men defeating Team Quebec then, and that was the same result we saw in the women's final.
So typically at the end of an AFL match, the victorious team will sing, and it looks like Ontario's getting ready to sing their club song. The question is, what is the Ontario club song?
Yeah, it is one of the more unique traditions of the Australian football culture. What I find interesting is you see that in the AFL, not only will the team sing the song, but it'll be played over the speakers, even if the team victorious is the team that's on the road. And think about how before a big sporting event, you'll hear the national anthems of the teams being played. In Australia, they do play the Australian anthem before the grand final and other finals matches, but they also play the theme songs of the clubs that are present. Team Quebec having a conference of sorts following this game as they left it all on the table. They knew it was going to be tough here against Ontario. Now they are applauding and you hear the horns. And now in addition to the trophy presentations, the cleanup will commence. And I can tell you, there might be enough water bottles on the sideline to buy a small house after this weekend.
Yeah, I don't know how much good this is. It's pretty cool.
A good chance now to acknowledge the volunteers here organizing the national championships here in Toronto at Humber College.
Absolutely great work by all involved, and that's essential in terms of getting this tournament on the ground.
It's typical in club football. You'll have volunteers running water, running goal umpiring the games. We also have organizers who are coordinating things here on the sidelines all day, making sure there's water. We had a physiotherapist available for the players as well.
Yeah, the physiotherapy table has been pretty active during this tournament, and Penny has been the Jill of all trades during this weekend. She's been very busy doing a little bit of everything, including getting us at this broadcast table. So she's done a great job.
You'll see Quebec here lining up in respect and sportsmanship for the champion team, Ontario. Shaking hands there.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see. It's such a physical sport. There is such sportsmanship between the two teams, even if it gets heated sometimes when you're right there on the field.
Those are great moments. You lay a good bump and you shake each other's hand and ask if you're all right, help each other up.
Absolutely. It was bumped a few times this weekend, but complimented those players that were able to do so.
It's always good to have that kind of positive attitude on the field, even though it is a physical sport.
Boys, line it up.
Just getting ready for the presentations here. Trophies.
Let's enjoy this. Let's enjoy tonight.
Quebec Saints leaving the field now.
Waving to their supporters, I guess we can say, on the sidelines.
Yeah, the Montreal Angels clogging the sideline over on the right side in the shade. After 2 games today for the Montreal Angels, they were victorious over the West Coast team that was made up of players from British Columbia and Alberta.
Some small Yukon representation too.
Was there?
I believe there was one player from Yukon.
That's incredible. That was a great game. Montreal Rangers looking for a bit of redemption after dropping the contest to Ontario yesterday, and without not being able to get on the scoreboard. It was nice to have a game today. They took a victory and then came out against Ontario, a very well-oiled side, a side that moves the ball very well. Quebec gets 7 points on Ontario, but we're not able to take home the victory.
You may hear some ambient noise, I guess you could say, in the background as they're pulling off the medals as well as the plaques for the title-winning teams. See, at least one of the Ontario women's players is on crutches, so the weekend has had its toll on at least one of the players. But
That's Team Canada player Rebecca Gomez, ruck for the Ottawa Swans. Unfortunately, looks like it was her knee yesterday.
despite the injury, she's still all smiles because her team has proved victorious.